Hi everyone, welcome back. This is number 9 of our video tutorial series for making airports for X-Plane with WED. And last episode was about facades, and today we are continuing with facades, but more specifically, we'll be talking about the terminal kit. We get lots and lots of questions about the terminal kit, and it is an ingenious invention by Peter. He made that terminal kit. He came up with the idea of how it works, and I'll try to explain to you how it actually can be used to its best effect. You can find the terminal kit under lib, airport, modern airports, and then terminal kit, and you get all these things here in the terminal kit. And we have a very good article here in the documentation tab of the developer.x-plane.com website. When you go to scenery, then you'll find this article about the terminal kit. And here the author, Peter, explains everything, how it is supposed to be used. So you can basically read this article, and I suggest to keep it handy for reference, because it shows you the different elements that are contained in the terminal kit, what they're called, and more importantly, what different heights these elements can assume. For example, you'll see that there's a terminal building ground, which is obviously this one here on the ground, and it can only be 5 meters tall, and you can see it here again. And then you'll have the terminal building levels facade, and you can see them here. These are the light blue ones, and they start out at about 4 meters height, and they can go up to 25 in steps of 5. And there's one special one here that is used like a roof, that's shown a little bit further down. And you also get the other ones and the other elements like the roof level, the bridge, the terminal bridge, and the joints, and of course the slab, which is like a roof jutting out. And here he gives some examples of how things look. Of course, now with WED 2.1, we can look at that stuff already in WED at the time when we pick the facade to use. And there are basically 4 different types. They have a different texture. You see this one is like grayish metallic looking, this one is more bright concrete looking, and then we have this yellowish and this red brick type. But you'll also see there's some subtle differences. If you look at the windows, you will sometimes see that you don't get the exact same option on different numbered variants of the terminal kit, and that's something to watch out for. For example, here if you look at this terminal buildings level 1, you get the passenger windows continuous, but you don't get that on the building levels 2. You get windows long, for example. You don't get windows continuous. So there's some subtle differences, but of course you can preview all that stuff in WED. And then there's the levels 1. If you set it to a height, he says when the height is set at 5 meters above ground level, this component is rendered as a slab, so it looks like a roof type, and this is pretty convenient to make less. It looks like a gas station thing, or maybe like a sun roof or so, or you can use it as a roof to the ground building. And then there's the terminal building tall, which is just like a regular facade. It always starts at the bottom, goes all the way up to the height you specify. And if you scroll back up here, you can see that the terminal building tall is not ending at 5, 10, 15, 20 meters, but it goes up 1 meter higher, which is okay, because it gives a little distinction when you use it together with these the levels here. But on the other hand, it makes it impossible to use the roof stuff, which must fit exactly on top. So you can't use roof stuff with the tall buildings. And Peter explains all this in his article. Well, I could basically say this is it, read the article and start building. But of course, I'll show you how it's all meant to be. used. And we'll go back to our little airport here. Of course, this airport really has not much use for the terminal kit because there are no terminals, but you can also use the terminal kit to make smaller buildings, of course, just like you saw, maybe just like a little office building or something. So I decided to put the stuff over here on the other side of the runway into the grass, and we'll just look at it in sim just to figure out how everything is meant to be used. Of course, we'll start with the ground level. You can see it here in the preview window. This is totally straightforward. You just make a ground ground level, and you can specify whatever height you want. It will always be at the fixed height of 5 meters. So I'll just make it 5 meters. As a habit, I like to input correct height into facades, even though the facade may not yet support the height that I choose, because maybe in the future there will be another variant that goes to 10 or 15 meters, and if you just put in 20 meters because you don't care, then in a future version your airport might look stupid because the building is suddenly much higher than it used to be. So I try to future-proof my facades by putting in heights that are approximately correct. And of course, if you pick a facade, let's pick the levels 1 and start with a 10-meter one. If I put this in here, then this will be your default height selection for all facades that you ever pick. So try to specially keep this value at a reasonable height, because if you put like 1 here or 100 or so, then you may not notice as you build facades that they all have the height property 100. And as I said, in a future version of X-Plane, that might look stupid. We'll just put the level here right next to it. And again, I'm just making it rectangular. I'm not really messing with the wall properties here. If I select the node, you can see the wall properties set to solid. And of course, as normal, you can pick passenger windows with sun blinds and so on. And you get a little different, like before, a little different color setting here if you do that, so that you can see that you pick the different facade property, node property for this wall. And we'll put a little slab here just for kicks. This is the little roof that juts out to protect an entrance from the rain or something like that. We'll just put that here. And again, even this little slab, it comes in 4 distinct types. You can see that mostly in the color of the roof, but you can also set the color of this little tiny thin wall if you pick the node as before. And you see this one is set to white, but you can also make it concrete, yellow, red, or metallic. We'll just go red here for the front. See how that looks. And there's the building tall. And again, you can see, you can preview this in the window. You can hold down the right mouse button, go up and down to change the height. And you can see it's made for walls 5, 10, 15, 20, 24 it says, but I think these are actually higher. This is like 6, 11, 16, 21, and so on. And we'll put this one right next to this one just to make sure that we see the difference when we look at it. And this one, remember, was set to 10. We'll also put this to 10, and then we'll see the difference in height between these. Now, the roof elements are something that you can see here. They have different properties as you turn. You can see that we can make like little air conditions. We can make these skylight looking things, and you get the solar panel. Bigger or a smaller solar panel, you get a medium-sized air condition, you get this type, you get all sorts. And usually what it does, it repeats. Now let's put a roof element on top of this one, and we'll just go like this. It's just like you have to make 1, 2, at least 3 nodes to make it happen. And you can see that this is at 10 meters height. You want to make sure that it's at 10 meters height, because otherwise it will be, if it's too low, you won't see it. It's inside the building, or it would float over the roof of this building, and that's not what we want. And right now you see this little circle here. The circle means that this is the first node. This is where it starts. And especially when you do roofs, this is important because if your facade is on sloping terrain, and let's say this is node number 1, so this is the height or the node that determines the elevation of the facade, then you also want to make sure that the first node is close to the same spot. Otherwise, these the whole roof facade that we're building here may be sinking into the ground, into the building, or coming out of the building. And of course, we don't want that. And if you're on really slopey terrain, but you don't want the facade to start right here, you put this over here anyway, and you make the first part of it. Oops, you need to pick the correct thing again. Where is it? Roof elements up here. You need to make the first section of it invisible, which it is right now, and see if I'm changing this one. It's the first part is empty, so it's invisible, and now I can say, hey, this one I want to have small air conditioning units, and this one I want to have skylights. And the 8 meters is always the distance between the skylights. So you can pick them 8 meters, or you can make them 12 meters, so they're even further apart. And this especially is where the preview comes in handy. Previously, you just had to put this down and then kind of guess where everything went, look at it in X-Plane, and then adjust. Now we can really grab this one and make it look just the way we want it, and have this being on top, or you know, make the roof elements just the way we want. And this is the first roof elements that we have. We also have a roof level, which is kind of like a little you know, accessory housing thing that you put on top. You also want to make sure that it's at the correct height, otherwise it will be floating or inside the building. And you can also determine the walls of this. You can say, hey, I want to have this one should be a service entrance. Over here, I want to have some air conditioned vents, and maybe on this side, I want some tubes, and the tubes you can see. And here's the, again, the preview, and you can see these are the vents. This is the service entrance. This is the solid wall. Make this a little smaller. And this is the tubes that jut out. And now a really cool, oh, there's one more that I want to show you, that this the skylight. It's just what it says. It's a skylight. It comes in different variants. And if you put the skylight on top, it would look like this. Oops, again, you need at least 3 nodes. And see, this one is kind of dashed. Why is it dashed? Because when I placed the skylight, I was kind of sloppy and made this one, you know, I moved the mouse while I clicked, so I made this one a Bezier curve. And if I click, hold down the shift key, click on the arrow, you remember it turns into a regular node. Now this is a straight line again. And I can also pick the type of the skylight I want. Let's say I want the skylight hip, and want it over here as well. And then it would look like this. And again, you can pick and make this longer. You know, you don't make it look stupid, but you get the idea. You can make a nice little skylight with it, and have obviously have different variants for that as well. Now the pipes are something else. You can see here's the preview, and you get the 3 pipe variant, you get the single pipe variant, and when you lay down a pipe, you would go like this. Again, at least 3. You get the preview, and you see here it just starts as like an empty pipe. That's not what we want. We want this to look like it's coming out of the ceiling. So you would go single pipe start, and now you see you get this little start looking thing. And then it's the same thing over here. You want this to be the end, but if you change this to end, it wouldn't happen, because this node determines what this stretch would be if there was another stretch. You can change this to whatever you want. It has no effect. You need to change this node, because this node determines the property of the downstream segment, and you want this to be single pipe end. And that's where you can see it now sinks back into the ceiling here. And that's that. Now we'll look at this in the simulator in a second. You can also make buildings that like are inside each other. I'll show you what I mean. Let's make a ground level here. It goes up to 5 meters, and I'll make this rectangular. Now I just want to put a a level on top of that. This is just the ground. Now I want to put the level on top of that. I'm not going to just click, click, click again and then try to make it look nice. I'm going to duplicate this, Control Shift D. Now I have, it didn't work, I have to select it, D. You know what, I remember this is, I'm taping this, so Control Shift D doesn't work. I have to go duplicate in place. Now I have two ground levels up here, and I can take this one. I hold down my Shift key, I grab a little bit the side, and you can see it. See how it stretches out, and you always want to make sure that the level is a little bigger than the ground segment, because the ground segment, as you saw here in the preview, or actually the ground does go to 5. Here we go. You can, if you look at this, the ground always goes to 5, but the levels go a little bit below that. And the reason is that if you don't have the same starting point of these facades, they may be at a different elevation. And this is like the proofing against that. There's a little bit of an overlap, and you can see where he makes these example ones. The levels, the top one always overlaps the ground a little bit, and you just want this because otherwise the wall of the ground and the wall of the level are really close to each other, and you may get some called a Z fighting. It's when X-Plane doesn't know which facade is in front of the other, and it starts flickering really bad. So you always want to make sure that when you do that, that you have some overlap, and you have a little yardstick down here. Now this is 1 meter. I would just I cannot turn it, but I would make sure that it's almost a meter, and that should future-proof you against Z fighting. And it's the same thing. Let's make this one the level. I'm going to pick level. I'm going to copy the resource. I'm going to paste the resource, hit return, and I'm also going to paste the resource into the name so I know that this is the levels. And now I have levels on top, which is 10 meters tall. And then let's say I want another levels inside of that. So I'm going to go like this. I will copy, or actually edit, go duplicate again. I have a third one. Now the third one I'm going to make smaller because I want this to be jutting out of the first one, so to say, because I want this to be a different color. And I'm making this one 15 meters. And then on top of that, I want another one, maybe a little towery looking thing jutting out. And I'll make this, turn it a little bit so it doesn't look like 3-year-old made it. I want this one to be 25 meters, just to give you an idea how that is supposed to work. And now I also want there to be a little drive-through passage. So I'm taking the ground one again, and I'm making here, I will just simply split this. I'll select this one and this one. I'll split it. Now I have two ground ones. I'll take this one, and it doesn't look so great. I'll just move this over here. So basically I split the ground level. I move it over here. And now I have this tunnel type thing. You'll see that in a minute. And just for kicks, I'm going to put some columns in there. You can see you get all these columns. I like to use the ones that have the B ending. They have a little safety hash down, on the bottom, so stupid guys like me wouldn't crash into it. And you can either place them individually. You could also place them out here on this little overhang to make it look a little more sturdy, or you can use the string. Now the string is, when you click on string, it highlights this one, and the string is just that, it's a string. You specify the beginning and the end, you click return, and if you look really close, you see there's these little the preview of these columns where they would be, and you can adjust the spacing. Let's go with 8 meters, and you see the spacing increases to 8 meters. Now this is just general to give you a general idea. I found out that this is not always exactly the spot where the column will appear later on. but it's certainly handy if you want to make a really long stretch of columns, maybe along, the line here or so, then use the string, and that saves you a lot of work. Or you can use the string and then place them manually if you're really retentive about that. And well, let's see how everything looks. We'll added a lot of stuff, and I'm going to grab all this, click the first one, hold down shift, click the last one. Now pull it into my airport, and of course these ones belong there too. I'm going to pull that up here, and I'm not going to really save this because this is just for demonstration. Now for kicks, let's also show you what the terminal bridge looks like. The bridge is a floating facade. You can see that here, and we'll just add a bridge to maybe my little thing that I built up here. Now, when you build with a terminal kit, you really want to be imagining how things look three-dimensionally. And if you attach this, you could just make this run in here. And if you would do that, then you would probably uh, highlight this top one here and put a note here, put a note here. So if you have windows on this wall, that the windows don't cut into the terminal bridge, or you could just, make notes here and then join the notes so that it looks like it's really attached. And this one should have a height of maybe 20 meters, so it floats really high. Then you have the bridge joint, which is something that is a little bigger. And it looks like this is, I will also put this at 20 meters so you get the idea. And we'll make a big hall. We'll put the big hall over here. Again, the big hall is just like a regular facade. It's never, oops, missed that little circle here. It's never floating or anything. And we'll make this one not that big of a big hall, 15 meters high. And what else can we do? Well, we do have the entrances here. The entrances are little 3D looking object thingies that you can maybe, if you could put one here. You have to know which way is front. I think they're like this way. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to double check. And you could just put the entrance here. Of course, you can also take the terminal kit or the big hall, add nodes, and then make this one instead of solid. We'll say this is a glass wall with an entrance, and this one would be glass wall just regular without entrance, and then we'll see how that looks in comparison. But having these little 3D entrances certainly looks nice, and they come in different variants. Also, these little really just thin ones, and that's it. That's the columns. That's the entrances, and now we'll talk about the jetways really quick before we fire this up. Now, jetways are in another article in the helping or this help scenery documentation thing, and it's called customizable jetways. Now, the customizable jetways replace the jetway objects we have. Peter again made a very good explanation how everything works. Read through this, and it really explains things much better than I could. And you can see you can make some really intricate different jetways. And now one cool thing about it is, I'm not sure when this is going to happen, but if you place jetway facades, then eventually in the future when X-Plane may get movable jetways, the X-Plane can take the position of your facade and really use that to have the customizable jetways. Now the jetways are in ramp equipment, and there's a subfolder called jetways. See, these were the old jetways. You would get sort of object typey things that you can just place, but they always had to be the same length and the same angle. You couldn't really move them. Now we get these 4 different types of jetways, and you can see it gives you a preview so you know which ones you're building. And I'll take the jetway to glass facade now, and I'll just put one here on my terminal kit. And you start out on the building, you make a first segment, then you make a second, third. You can go pretty far with it, and I'll just go like this. And you can see here's the default is just a regular jetway. It ends with a little rotunda, and I assume that maybe this one will be my tunnel parked, and you can see already it is too small. If I move it out a little bit, see how it stretches. You can make that long or short. I'll make it like this. And then this little segment, the last one here, I want to be the cabin. And the length of this segment doesn't really matter. You can see I make it long or short. It doesn't change anything, but you can change the orientation here. And there are different ones. You can make it, these tunnels are at fixed lengths, and if you pick one, you'll see that they don't always, you have to make them exactly the correct length. I'm not really sure what the usage would be for this. I just make a tunnel parked, and then I portray my jetways like they are parked. I never portray them like they're docked at the airplane, because they may be in the way if you use another airplane. Put them in your scenery like they were parked, and that would also have the benefit that if we ever get moving jetways, X-Plane knows already what the parked position of the jetway is, and then can start moving it from there. There's no different heights for the jetways. You can put whatever you want, but it's fixed, and this makes it impossible to create jetways for like the A380 upper deck or so, or jetways that go down for Challenger jets or smaller jets like that, CRJs. They're always at the same height, which is typical for a 320 or a 737. But it looks pretty good. And if you don't make it like it's docked at the airplane, then you're not really going to notice that it's not at the correct height, because obviously real jetways can adjust the height as they dock on the airplane of choice. So now you have the components here. You have the terminal kit, you have the jetway, and that's all you need to make decent passenger buildings for your airport. And I'm going to move this one into my project, otherwise it wouldn't render. And I'm going to export the scenery pack, and then I'll get the error. It's not downloading the CIFP coordinates, which is okay for now. And it obviously worked okay. I didn't get any validation warning. I'm just going to make this small. Fire up X-Plane. Okay, and here I am back at our little airport, and this is what we built here on the green meadow, so to say. Let's start with the jetway that we just placed. You can see I obviously picked the wrong type for this one. Let's go back here to our project, and you can see, yes, I made this tunnel parked, and this one also tunnel parked, so it looks kind of dumb, but you get the idea. And those work pretty well. You can see our big hall, and this is that little entrance that we placed. It seems to be the right way around. And here is the entrance that was automatically placed because we made this section of our big hall, the one glass wall with entrance. Excuse me. But you can already also see that it's, where the nodes are, you get this little slab that has, or this little side that has no glass. So, maybe using this one could come in handy at a certain point when you want to create a very special effect. Now, this is our intricate three-way different levels building. And you can see here's the ground level, the one I split, and here is the little passageway that I made. And of course, you can make your ground vehicles go through here, and you can, change the facade properties, make all sorts of windows, these service gates, and so on. And you can see that I used two different facades. Now, this is not really the way I wanted it to come out. I wanted this to be a different type, but you can see this one could be gray, and then this one could be yellowish or red like this one. But you see how I created this overlap here, and this is important because if we scoot inside, you can see that well, you can't really see, but you can see now. See, this wall is close to this wall, and if you go really far away and X-Plane, it might start Z fighting, and you get a flickering effect. I did create enough distance between these, but if you go really close, then this will invariably happen. And it's especially annoying if you inspect your stuff, you look close, and it's not happening if you view it from this distance. But if you approach the airport and you're 5 miles away, then the way X-Plane creates the graphics will just give you this Z finding, and that's something that you want to avoid. Otherwise, you have to go back and change your whole scenery. Now, this is the part that's jutting out. I used the level 4, and you can see it's a different texture. Here's the bridge. I didn't pick windows for it, but you can make this a nice lattice girder. And this again is the part that is the joint. You can see it's a little thicker, so it looks like it's you know it's a jointy thing that you can add some. You couldn't really put columns underneath because the columns are too short. There are taller columns, I think, also, but this one would be a little high. But this would be a good way to connect like two terminals and have some cars go underneath and stuff like that. Here's our ground level that we made. Again, we didn't pick any interesting wall properties. And here's that slab that you get. And remember, we made it red in the front. So that's all there is to it. And here you can see there's our levels. It's just 5 meters. And there's the tall building right next to it, and you can see that it's just this little bit higher, and that's why the roof stuff wouldn't work on this one. And here you can see our roof elements, and you get the pipes back here, the air conditioning. And of course, if you just want one of these instead of a million, then you just make a really short facade and just move it wherever you like. And of course, you can make single roof elements that way, and it looks nice. And in addition, also when you change the time of day, you do get some pretty cool lighting effects, and this gives some texture to your airport. Of course, we'll talk about adding lights later on. For now, our airport is pretty dark, but the terminals and see, here's our big call. You see how that lights up at night, and it gives some dimension and some intrinsic light to your airport scenery, which is a great way Peter made these things. Well, this concludes our terminal kit introduction. Go wild with it. Look at some stuff that other people did, and look at the prefab buildings. We'll talk about that in another video. There's some prefabricated buildings using many elements that you can just download and copy into your own scenery. We'll talk about that in another video. But some people come up with amazing stuff using the terminal kit, and it's just something great to have. So thank you very much, Peter.